HRN listeners. As we celebrate our 15th year, we are deepening our commitment to giving voice to the next generation of food systems storytellers, and we need your help. Our internship and fellowship programs help activate new possibilities for underrepresented and underestimated young people through experiential journalism, audio engineering, and production training. Through these unique programs, HRN helps food equity stewards build essential workforce readiness skills that expand their potential and foster economic mobility. Please consider supporting these critical programs. And with a minimum donation, you can be entered to win a dinner for two at an amazing restaurant in one of 8 cities and tickets to a concert at a great venue in one of those cities. We have incredible partners across the country who have donated, as they also share our passion for helping to educate the next generation of food systems storytellers. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. And make sure you donate before March 31st. Thank you.
Today's program has been brought to you by S. Wallace Edwards & Sons, third-generation cure masters producing the country's best dry-cured and aged hams, bacon, and sausage. For more information, visit surreyfarms.com. You're listening to Heritage Radio Network, broadcasting live from Bushwick, Brooklyn. If you like this program, visit heritageradionetwork.org for thousands more.
All right, thanks for tuning in to the Heritage Radio Network. You're listening to the Farm Report, and I'm your host, Erin Fairbanks. We are coming to you live from the back of Roberta's Pizza in beautiful Bushwick, Brooklyn. It's a lovely sunny day, and we are joined in the studio today by Joshua Brau. Joshua is the program manager for Foods with Integrity, a program through Chipotle. Joshua, welcome.
Thanks a lot for having me.
So I know people out there might be thinking, gosh, I tuned into the Farm Report. What the heck are you doing talking to some guy from a fast food company? So we're going to get to that question. But before we do, I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit about what is Foods with Integrity and kind of what is your position more generally.
Sure. So, well, Food with Integrity is basically Chipotle's mission or vision of for all of our food. I sort of like to think that it covers the other things that we do, like packaging and energy use in restaurants and stuff. But what it's really about is our food. And, I think it's focusing on 2 things. So the first is responsibly raised ingredients. And we'll probably get into that in a little bit. And the second is taking those ingredients, and this is a pretty important part of it, taking those ingredients and really preparing them with care in the restaurants, essentially cooking, which is what makes us unique as a fast food company, I think.
Cool. So one of the funny things, here on the Farm Report, we're often looking at, deconstructing the food system and putting things, in a context that makes sense for those of us who don't work professionally in food. And so I thought it might be fun to take our discussion today, basically like through the life of a burrito. I mean, I was looking at the Chipotle menu. You guys do burritos, burrito bowls, tacos, chips and guac. But when I think Chipotle, I always think burrito. So I want to start there and just kind of talk through some of the ingredients and get a sense of your sourcing mechanisms and scale and kind of the what's what behind the different products. So obviously you can't make a burrito without a tortilla. Which is like the foundation, the wrap, if you will. So maybe we should start there, and you can tell us a little bit about the tortillas that you use.
Sure thing. So we have 2 kinds of tortillas, really 3 kinds, because we do flour tortillas for burritos, and then we have corn tortillas both for the crispy tacos and the soft tacos. So the flour tortillas are really fascinating to me because they're a food for sure, but they're also a container, and so I think as a container, you need to have certain pliability and other characteristics that if we weren't wrapping food in the tortilla, we wouldn't need. And tortillas are probably, to me, our biggest challenge on the menu in terms of sourcing, the cleanest label, the highest quality stuff, because first of all, the nature of tortillas requires some solid fat. So traditional flour tortilla would have lard, but we want to serve vegetarians and vegans, and so we look to alternatives to lard. The most common one that you'll find in tortillas anywhere is partially hydrogenated oil. The other option being palm oil, typically. So we have trace amounts of partially hydrogenated oil in the tortillas, but we are always looking to improve on that, and both that aspect of the tortillas as well as many others. So we're experimenting with increasing the ratio of whole wheat in the tortillas, and possibly including some organically grown wheat. So tortillas are a really interesting story. It's something that we have a lot of brains at Chipotle working on improving. So that's the flour one. Then when it comes to corn and the corn, crispy corn and soft corn tortillas, one of the most interesting things to me about those is our crispy corn tortillas. So typically in fast food restaurants and even non-fast food restaurants, deep fryers are filled with soybean oil. Soybean oil usually is coming from GMO soybeans, and that's a problem. We can certainly talk a little bit about that. But we've been switching over in the U.S. from soybean oil to sunflower oil. One of the reasons being that sunflower oil is non-GMO. There's no such thing as a GMO sunflower on the market, as far as I know. But we also like the way it tastes, and so it's sort of a win-win there.
Excellent. So, I mean, one of the things that I find so interesting when you're having discussions around fast food companies is you're not, you're big. You're commanding a lot of food, so any kind of shift that you make in your purchasing decision essentially has the opportunity to have pretty great ripple impacts and to really set a standard for food production in the country. Not Chipotle alone, of course, but as one of many companies. And I think looking particularly at the soybean versus sunflower oil, like that shift kind of creates a demand for a whole new product line, and that's a big power, and I think also a big responsibility.
Well, it is, and I think that what's most interesting about that specific change is that it shows that there are alternatives to some of the ingredients that as a country we want to move away from, and we've proven in a number of cases that there are really great viable alternatives that may even taste better and be healthier for our customers, and so it's exciting to be a part of that movement.
And has Chipotle taken a stance more generally on the GMO argument, or?
Yeah, we have. So we talk about this a lot internally, and this is a big issue. It's only increasing. I actually just saw in my email a few minutes ago that Senator Boxer introduced a GMO labeling law in the Senate today, so I'm excited to see where that goes. But, there are GMOs in our food, like all fast food restaurants, but we're really committed to figuring out ways to remove them as much as possible. So I gave you the soybean oil example, the transition to sunflower oil. The other places that you'll see GMOs in our restaurants are in the corn and the corn tortillas, and that's something that we're looking at. But as you know, it's about 90% of the corn produced in the country comes from genetically modified crops, and so we're looking into alternatives to that, whether it's non-GMO but not organic corn, or organic corn, which, as we know, is never GMO. So that's the first place. The second would be some of the cooking oils that we use on the grill, and again, we're moving away from the soybean oil there toward alternatives like rice bran oil or canola oil. That's really exciting too. The two things that I think are bigger challenges on the GMO front are come in ingredients that we're not necessarily using directly in the restaurants, but they're indirectly in our food, and that is our beverages, the sodas that you drink from the Coke fountain, and then the feed that's given to animals. So we've got some really great stories on the meat front, but one of the things that is nearly impossible for any meat producer, even some of the great ones that sell at a farmer's market, for example, the feed that they're giving their animals, the grains, or if it's corn and soy and it's not organic, typically it's a genetically modified grain.
Yeah, well, that's super true, and I think something people don't realize. I know, like with pigs in particular, there's no, you don't see much organic pork out there because pigs are such huge consumers of grain, and there's just not a ton of organic grain on the market. I mean, you're essentially setting up a competition between the your local pork producer and Frito-Lay who wants to make organic chips with regards to production. But I think there is an opportunity for organizations like yours to start talking about, hey, we're looking to make some of these changes. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about timeline. It's not like you flip a switch overnight and every Chipotle across the country is now using something different. There's a kind of supply and demand issue that, there's a ramping up to make these transitions, but then also kind of physically getting the word out to the stores and finding the distribution chains in different parts of the country. Because you guys have almost 1,500 stores in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think by the end of this year we will.
And then you're also starting to do some work internationally.
That's right. We have restaurants in Canada, a handful of them in Toronto, and one in Vancouver, I believe, and a few in London and one in Paris.
So there's a lot of competing. It just seems like there's when you're looking at putting together a burrito, to me, it initially seems very simple, but then you start thinking about kind of the sourcing and the supply, keeping the price in line, making sure you're using the best tasting products, creating a product that's consistent across the world, per se. And then if you're looking in particular at cooking oils and transitions, it's like different oils can, react very differently in the kitchen, and
Sure.
some are suitable for certain tasks and others just aren't. So lots going on there. And since you brought up meat, let's kind of jump right into that. So what are the meat choices for burritos at Chipotle?
So you've got 4 choices now. You've got carnitas, which is a braised pork. You've got barbacoa, which is a braised beef. And then you have grilled chicken and grilled steak.
And so on the, on your website, you guys talk a little bit about, whenever possible, you use meat from animals raised without the use of antibiotics or added hormones. So how do you kind of set standards for where you buy from? And maybe if it makes sense, if you want to pick the pork or the beef or the chicken or something more specific that we can kind of talk through and give us just a sense of the story behind that.
Sure. Well, to me, the pork is the best story. First, because that's really where everything began with Steve Ells, our founder, and the whole Food with Integrity mission, but also because, to me, there's the biggest difference between commodity pork and the pork that you're going to get at Chipotle. And in fact, for carnitas, for pork, if we can't find the types of pork that we're looking for, we won't sell carnitas in the restaurant at that time. Fortunately, it hasn't been an issue for us in recent years, but that's the policy. So if we can't find pork that was raised without sub-therapeutic antibiotics and certain humane conditions, then we just won't serve it. But so the pork story is really exciting. So Steve started the company in 1993, and sometime I want to say it was like 99, 2000. He, as the company was growing, he really wasn't happy with the quality of the carnitas, the taste and the eating quality of it, and he started looking into alternatives. Reading an article in The Art of Eating about Paul Willis and Nyman Ranch, he started exploring that option. He sampled some of Paul's pork, and the difference was really astounding to him. And so even though the price difference was pretty substantial, and he had to raise the price of a carnitas burrito by about $1, which was at that time was really significant. I think carnitas was $4 or $5 then. He made that transition, and carnitas sales really exploded because it tasted a lot better. And that was sort of the beginning of Steve's journey to look into all of the ingredients that we buy and to really try and find sources that weren't based on exploitation. So I described a little bit about the pork. It's antibiotic free, no sub-therapeutic antibiotics, which is an important distinction for us. The animals are either raised out on pasture. I don't know if you've been to Paul's farm. I know you've been involved in some pork production in the past.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I saw a peek of it in the what is it, the meat movie that just came out that you got. I mean, they do feature American Meat. Yeah, sorry.
Paul's in there. That's right.
Yeah, so I've seen it, via video, and people can check that out on American Meat, which is screening, across the country right now, and definitely a film worth taking a peek at.
So anyway, so they're either raised outdoors on pasture or in deeply bedded barns. And, most pork in the country, I want to say 95%, these numbers are changing, are raised in pretty terrible confinement conditions. So we've really created the market, helped create the market for this type of pork and other meats, and it continues to be something that we're pushing forward all the time.
So do you have a sense, if I'm a farmer and I want to kind of start selling to Chipotle, how that process works a little bit?
So I'm not directly involved in sourcing the meat, but I spend a lot of time talking to the team of people that does. And, there are a number of ways that as a farmer you could get into our supply chain. The most typical way would be to become a part of a network like Niman Ranch, which is not a co-op, but functions in some ways like a co-op in that it aggregates producers who follow a certain set of protocols. So that's really the way to do it. And, we work with Niman Ranch, we work with a number of others, and, those things tend to operate somewhat regionally. And so, if I were a farmer in a specific part of the country, I would look to my neighbors and colleagues to figure out sort of where the quote unquote naturally raised network was
Sure.
based.
Find a point of entry that way. And do you have a sense that your pork producers now are predominantly pork producers who were already farming using these methods or started a farm using these methods, or are they farms that have transitioned because there's now this opportunity to produce food in a different way than they had been previously?
So I think it's across the board. There's a lot of variation. So we do know a lot of stories about farmers who, their families have been on the land that they're farming for generations, and transition from good old fashioned pasture farming to conventional pork production, and then transition back because they wanted to earn the premium that Chipotle and other companies are willing to pay for the higher quality meats, but some have been doing it all along. So it's really a range.
A mixed bag, yeah. That makes sense. Well, I want to move on to some of the non-meat ingredients, but we are going to take just a short break, and when we come back, I would love to talk into the bean conversation. So hang tight.
Great.
You're listening to the Heritage Radio Network, and we're talking burritos.
This one's called Someone Like You by Pamela Royal on the heritageradionetwork.org.
Like what you hear so far? Support the network and become a member. Membership helps us bring you the best food radio in the world and gives you access to thousands of dollars in discounts at the sustainably minded businesses that support us. To become a member, visit heritageradionetwork.org today. Today's program has been brought to you by S. Wallace Edwards & Sons. Edwards Suriano hams are aged to perfection for no less than 400 days and hickory smoked to achieve a deep mahogany color. The Edwards name is well known for its world-class aged and cured meats. Their exclusive curing and aging recipe produces a unique flavor profile that enhances the quality characteristics of Berkshire pork. Optimum amounts of pure white fat marbling contribute to a flavor that's a delicate, perfect balance between sweet and salty. For more information, visit www.surreyfarms.com.
All right, we are back. You're listening to the Farm Report. I'm your host, Erin Fairbanks, and we are in the studio with Josh Brau of Chipotle, and we're talking about the sourcing of their products. And so before the break, we were talking a little bit about meat, but I do want to get a chance to touch on some of the other items that compose the burrito. Now, I saw on the website that with regards to the beans, that something like 40% of the beans are sourced organically. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So about 40% of the beans are sourced organically, and then another smaller percentage, about 5%, are grown using conservation tillage or no-till methods, which aren't organic certified, but we're Food Alliance certified. I know the Food Alliance designation may be disappearing because that organization's had some difficulties. But yeah, we work with bean farmers in a couple parts of the country. The Pacific Northwest is the one that I'm most familiar with. And they're doing some really interesting stuff. And, you know, our demand for beans grows with every restaurant. So, we spend a good bit of time, learning about that. It's not something that I'm really an expert on, but we have a person whose job it is to buy beans and rice and all of those things. And she knows a ton about, the way that all of our producers are growing their beans.
Cool. And just more generally, that 40% number, 40% is great. But I know people are asking, why not 100%? Like, what's the kind of barrier there? Do you have a sense, or?
Sure. Well, there are two barriers. The two obvious ones. One is price, and the other is supply and availability. And for us, both of them are factors. In the case of our meats, it's usually availability, because we're willing to pay the premium to get the higher quality meats that we buy. With respect to beans, I think it's also a matter of supply. And obviously, if at a certain price you can get, just about anything you want. But, we're trying to sort of slowly grow the supply as we grow and increase both the percentage of beans that we're buying from organic producers and the conservation tillage folks. But also, as we grow, that gross amount, the total pounds that we're buying, it more or less, is always going to increase every year.
So you bring up an interesting point with talking about beans being grown in different parts of the country, and that was one of the other things I was curious about is, with regards to your procurement, is there a focus on buying things domestically? And in particular, I'm looking at one of my favorite burrito ingredients, which is obviously guacamole, which is primarily composed of avocados. I know California produces a ton of avocados, but so does Mexico. And I'm just wondering how kind of domestic versus non-domestic works its way into the kind of hierarchy of decisions for purchasing.
Well, we're really focused on domestic sourcing. The vast majority of the ingredients that we buy are produced in the U.S., avocados included. We buy a lot of avocados from California, but we also buy from Mexico and a couple of other countries in South America. I'm not sure about that. But, we're really, despite the emphasis on domestic sourcing, we really are open to other options when, it's the responsible choice to make for, farmers as well as the bottom line and our customers. So, we're really always looking at the specific producer. And, my feeling is that, you can find great farmers all around the world. And, it's great to buy from the U.S., but when it makes sense, we will look outside the country.
And, I have to say, like, myself and I'm sure probably a number of listeners are super suspicious, and rightfully so, I think, of fast food companies, companies of the size that Chipotle is. One of the conversations I told some of my girlfriends that I was having you on, and they're like, well, Chipotle, aren't they owned by McDonald's? Isn't that just like the same thing in a different name? But you guys aren't and haven't been. No,
we have not been owned by McDonald's since, I believe, 2006. So McDonald's invested in the company when it was pretty small and helped us grow. But Steve, who I mentioned earlier, has been in charge the entire time. And, as far as I can tell, McDonald's, and I've actually worked for McDonald's before Chipotle. So, I don't really see any real influence. What McDonald's provided was the capital to grow and some of the sort of logistical know-how that you need to have a national restaurant company. But we're totally independent now. We're publicly owned. You could buy shares today. We're totally independent. But with respect to your other question about fast food, first of all, one of the things that I really love about Chipotle is that we're always the first to say that we're not perfect. We don't have all the answers. And, as committed as we are to really improving the way that fast food is done in this country, we have a long way to go, and it's really kind of a journey that will never be completed. I think that what differentiates us is that we're cooking a lot of our food in the restaurant, and typical fast food is designed for mass production and convenience and low cost, whereas what we're doing, obviously, we try to make it as affordable as possible, but there are certain things that we won't really sacrifice, like making our guacamole in the restaurants every day, and a lot of our other food as well. So we're definitely a fast food company, and personally, I'm really proud of that, because I think fast food it's an important component of the general food landscape, and I don't think it's going anywhere. But our mission is really to change the way that people think about and eat fast food, and to prove, and I think we've done this and we continue to do it. We're really proving that fast food can be cooked in the restaurants, and it can be made from really great ingredients.
They're kind of building an alternative system to fast food.
Absolutely.
Within the fast food system. So, right. I mean, that would be kind of the other thing where I'm like, I know that you guys have a concentration of shops in California, for example, kind of home of the burrito, taco. If I'm a consumer, I'm out on the road, why am I going to Chipotle? I mean, isn't it more sustainable, responsible to go to the kind of taqueria down the street that's, owned by, a small family? Like, how am I making those decisions as a consumer? Why is Chipotle, where does Chipotle stand out in that kind of hierarchy of decisions for an individual?
Sure. Well, I think it's a great question. I grew up in San Diego. I love little taquerias. I grew up eating in them, and, I continue to, and so does everyone that works at Chipotle. I think what the reason you go to a Chipotle when you're in California or anywhere else is because that you're gonna have a really high quality of ingredients. That what you're getting from the food, and it can be tailored sort of to whatever your mood is because of the nature of the service model. But I think California's interesting because we have we're testing this thing called sofritas, which is a tofu option. So it sits right next to the chicken and the barbacoa and the other meats, and it's an organic tofu that's made by a small artisanal producer in Oakland, and to me it's an awesome alternative to meat. And when I see when I compare what we're doing on that type of front to a typical taqueria, but I think it's partially because of our size. We're able to try and innovate and provide people with alternatives that don't exist currently.
So I think in some ways it's a little funny. You're almost competing against yourself in some sense. Like the tofu option, should people be eating less meat, do you think? Or, is that part of that conversation? Or do you finding there's like a rise in demand for vegetarians? Or, what's the driver behind including that on the menu?
So I would say all of the above. One of the things that I think is really cool about Chipotle is that unlike other fast food companies, our leaders, our CEO or our CMO, they'll come right out and say that people need to be eating less meat. And I think that type of honesty and transparency is really important. And, we want to provide an alternative, but the reality is if it doesn't taste good, we're not going to sell it and customers won't buy it. And that's where I think we really do a good job is, we have awesome chefs testing these items and developing the recipes for a very long time before we're bringing them to market. And so then when we do, we know that they're great and we can really stand behind them.
Well, I want to talk about that consistency factor. I know that's kind of one of the kind of go-to reasons for why people buy fast food, why you shop at fast food, why when I'm traveling through certain parts of the Midwest, I go to the Starbucks if I see the Starbucks because I know what I'm going to get. If you go to a Chipotle in New York or, New Mexico or, the Pacific Northwest, the carnitas burrito is the carnitas burrito. And I'm just curious, as producers, from the farming perspective of it, obviously there must, there is changes in the food production or, the pork tastes slightly different in certain parts of the country where it's grown, or the cilantro has a different, how do you kind of negotiate like how are standards set with regards to like how things kind of taste or the size of the thing? Every kind of potato that's grown from McDonald's has to conform to a specific size to be part of the McDonald's French fry. I mean, are there things like that for Chipotle where you're like, we buy pigs, at this size? You have those standards to maintain consistency, and I just wonder where some of the struggles or challenges come up with things.
Sure. Well, we have a good bit of flexibility because a lot of what we're doing is actually being cooked in the restaurant. So, sure, we have standards for the romaine that we buy, say. I think that's a good example. But because you have an actual human being cutting it, you're able to deal with the variation better than a machine in a factory or a commissary can. And so, if you ask Steve or if you ask some of our chefs about seasonal variation, they'll say that they can taste food differently in Chipotles around the country as well as over seasons. But, consistency really is, for us as well as, all of the other fast food companies, it's really one of the big challenges in moving toward a more sustainable model. And, I see in the future, fast food models that are seasonal, that incorporate certain seasonal characteristics into the food that they're cooking and the way that they're sourcing it. But we really, because of how limited our menu is, and because a lot of the things that we buy, think about what's in the guacamole or the salsas, it's onions, peppers, garlic, things that you can get in much of the country and through a pretty big growing season. We are able to probably rely on suppliers around the country a little bit more than if, like you said, we had to have potatoes that were a specific size, every day of the year.
Awesome. So unfortunately we are out of time, but before we go, I'm just curious, in your work, like kind of looking to promote and ensure and kind of be the kind of touchstone for the Foods with Integrity campaign. Let's say you have a magic wand and you're able to kind of like, bam, tomorrow make one sweeping change that you feel would be kind of very significant for both your organization, but also for the landscape of American farming. Is there something that jumps immediately to mind for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's animal genetics. I mean, one of the big challenges that we face on chicken, pork, and beef is that the genetics of most livestock in the U.S. have been bred for efficiency above all else, and that really restricts us from being able to get the taste that we want, get the welfare that we want, and we're working on a lot of really interesting projects. I wish we had more time to try and find sources that have the heritage genetics bred back into things like the Cornish cross chicken and the other really conventional breeds that we're using in the U.S.
Interesting. So if folks want to learn more about the campaign, what's the best way for them to get engaged with your work?
Well, the website's great, and social media, we're very responsive on social media. I am working on a really interesting project that's going to kind of expand on our discussion of these issues, and I can't talk about it now, but it's coming soon, and I promise you'll see it.
Stay tuned. All right, great. Well, thank you so much for being my guest today, Josh. It was really interesting to get a chance to speak with you.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
It was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for staying tuned in out there. Definitely check us out next Thursday. We'll be talking about churro sheep, so look forward to that. This program, like all 30 of our live weekly shows, are available for free as a download through iTunes. You can also find us on Stitcher Smart Radio. Or visit the website, which we hope you will. It's www.heritageradionetwork.org. We are a member-supported organization, so if you like what you hear, we hope you'll consider clicking that donate tab and becoming a member today. Thanks so much for listening, and keep tuned in.
Thanks for listening to this program on heritageradionetwork.org. You can find all of our archived programs on our website, or as podcasts in the iTunes Store by searching Heritage Radio Network. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at @heritage_radio. You can email us questions at any time at info@heritageradionetwork.org. Heritage Radio Network is a non-profit organization. To donate and become a member, visit our website today. Thanks for listening. What's hot at the green market? You're about to find out now. It's the Grow NYC Market Update.
All right. Thanks for tuning in to the Grow NYC Market Update. I'm your host, Erin Fairbanks, and we are on the line with Jean Hodesh of New York City's Green Markets. Jean, where are we traveling this week?
So this week, I thought we'd continue our tour through Brooklyn on over to Grand Army Plaza Green Market, which is our second largest green market in the program, and it happens to be my neighborhood green market, and I just love it. It's my favorite place to spend Saturday morning. So the market, if you've never been, it's located at the northwest corner of Prospect Park, and it was opened in 1989. It's right under the beautiful sort of Arc de Triomphe, that's this great iconic symbol of Brooklyn. And at the height of the season, there are over 30 vendors selling everything from smoked duck to local grains, these wonderful aged cheeses, fresh goat cheese, hard cider, pressed cider, potted herbs, and a wide variety of fruits and vegetables. And the market is amazing. People are just streaming in on Saturday mornings from all sorts of surrounding neighborhoods, Crown Heights, Prospect Heights, Park Slope, and Windsor Terrace, and it's just this mecca of activity. So I always run into people that I know. There are a ton of babies in strollers, but also there are a lot of people who are in their 20s and 30s who grew up going to that market, and now it's just this regular stop for them every week, and they hang out and really spend a lot of time catching up with their neighbors and talking to one another. And then you'll get runners coming in and out of the park on their way to and from, making loops around, and tons of people just coming in from every direction with bags of textiles to recycle. They're lugging in bags of compost to drop off. They've got milk bottles they're going to return to Ronnie Brook. And I'm always coming over with my library books because the library is right across the street. So I offload my library books, and then I lighten my load, and I can start shopping.
Awesome. Well, what are you shopping for? I mean, who can we expect to find at the market?
So this market is year-round, but it is very exciting in late April because we see a lot of old faces that have been gone through the winter coming back. So just last weekend, Bill Maxwell returned, and you'll find him in the northwest corner of the market, right at that sort of corner by Prospect Park West. And he's got a limited supply right now. Things are just starting to heat up on his farm, so he's got arugula and scallions for now, but eventually in the summer he's got an amazing array of Jersey-grown heirloom tomatoes. And then another person that just came back last week is our flower vendor, LeBach Farm, and he's got these beautiful, huge bunches of bright yellow forsythia branches and tulips in every shade and lots of daffodils. And then if you look out in the next couple of weeks, he'll have buckets full of lilacs. And then on May 4th, Kernan Farm will return. And I'm not making any promises, but Liz told me, she's like, one thing is always certain, they never show up without sweet peas. So it's always an exciting day when Kernan comes back. And they're also located in New Jersey. So they're always, the first of the market to have asparagus, strawberries, and cherry tomatoes. And then just across the market from Kernan, you'll find, inevitably, it's always a really long line for Blue Moon fish. They're an amazing fishmonger, and they just recently came back. They're off all winter in the Florida Keys, but they've been back for a couple weeks, and they sell amazing smoked fish, all kinds of shellfish, whole fish fillets. They're also at Union Square on Wednesdays, so yesterday I saw them and I got some mackerel fillets, so I would recommend seeing if they've got any of those at Grand Army this weekend. The mackerel season ends in May, so you want to get them while you can.
Awesome. Well, so for folks who are making a special trip over to the market, what else is going on in the neighborhood that they should be sure not to miss?
This is such a good neighborhood to spend your Saturday in. There's so much going on. So there's the Brooklyn Public Library right across the street, and then the Brooklyn Museum is just a stone's throw away. So next Saturday, the 4th, is they always have free first Saturdays, so free admission from 5 to 11 at night. There's a really great show by a Nigerian artist that's up right now. And then also there's the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens, and this weekend they're going to host their annual Cherry Blossom Festival. And I just went over there, I think, 2 weekends ago and saw the magnolias in bloom, and they're so stunning. Such a great place to be this time of year. So if you haven't made it yet this spring, definitely go over for a visit.
Awesome. And I think one of my favorite things about the Brooklyn Botanical Garden is, if you're feeling strapped for cash and you can get over there before noon on Saturdays, it's free. So, Definitely. It always inspires me to get up maybe a touch earlier than I might, but is worth the trip. Well, that sounds awesome. Definitely one of my favorite markets. What else is happening at the green markets? What else is going on event-wise that we should be keeping on our calendar?
Sure. So not happening specifically in the green market, but I definitely wanted to mention the food book fair that's coming up May 2nd through 5th. There are just a number of panels and readings and dining events, chances to mingle with authors, chances just to buy cookbooks till your heart's content. So visit thefoodbookfair.com for a full lineup of events and places to go to take part in that event. And then Mother's Day is coming up right around the corner. It's like hard to believe that next week is May. But at Union Square on May 10th, we're going to have a flower arranging demonstration with Anna Tudoroff from Dutch Mill Gardens. So she'll teach you how to make beautiful bouquets. And then on May 11th, there's going to be an edible flower cooking demo with the Natural Gourmet, also at Union Square. So you can think about things to make for your mom for breakfast or for lunch to celebrate her that day. And then a little bit down the road, on Sunday, May 19th at noon at the Carroll Gardens Market, there's going to be a firefighters chili cook-off, which is going to be a really fun event. So it's going to be two different troops from that neighborhood, and they're going to face off who can make the best chili. And luckily for everyone who shops at the market, they'll get to try samples at noon. So definitely go over and say hello to the firefighters and eat their chili.
Oh, sounds like a hot competition. Awesome. Well, Jean, thanks so much for giving us the update. Appreciate you taking some time out to check in with us.
Sure.
For folks who want to find out more about what's going on at the markets, get a sense of schedule and days and where they can find all the great green markets in the city, you can definitely visit grownyc.org. You can also follow them on Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr. Check them out whichever way you want, and make sure you're tuning in every week for the Grow NYC Market Update.
Let's get it on. It's on. It's on. Let's get it on. It's on.
Thanks for listening to this program on heritageradionetwork.org. You can find all of our archived programs on our website or as podcasts in the iTunes Store by searching Heritage Radio Network. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at @heritage_radio. You can email us questions at any time at info@heritageradionetwork.org. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization. To donate and become a member, visit our website today. Thanks for listening.